The station hummed with life as thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds moved through its corridors. Helios Prime floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure of metal and light that served as neutral ground for the galaxy's many species. Here, treaties were signed, trade deals were made, and different civilizations tried to understand each other. Ji-hoon walked through the diplomatic quarter with a tablet in his hand. He was new to this part of the station. For the past 3 months, he had worked in the lower engineering decks, fixing air recyclers and power conduits. Now, someone in administration had decided he should help with a special project. The message on his tablet was brief. Report to Lab 7. Assist Dr. Nara with technology integration research. He found the lab at the end of a quiet hallway. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was filled with equipment he had never seen before. Strange devices with glowing crystals sat next to human-made computers. Holographic displays showed mathematical formulas that hurt his eyes to look at. At the center of it all stood Nara. She was unlike anything Ji-hoon had ever seen. Her body was covered in smooth, chitinous plates that shimmered with a deep blue-green color. 6 limbs extended from her torso, 4 for walking and 2 that served as arms with delicate multi-fingered hands. Her head was triangular, with large compound eyes that reflected light like polished gems. 2 mandibles framed what he assumed was her mouth, clicking softly as she worked. "Dr. Nara," Ji-hoon said carefully. She turned to face him. Her eyes were impossible to read, made up of thousands of tiny facets. Her mandibles clicked 3 times and a small device on her chest translated her words into English. "You are the human assistant they assigned to me." It was not a question. Her tone, filtered through the translator, sounded flat and cold. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Ji-hoon. I'm an engineer. The message said you needed help with—" "I did not request help." Her mandibles clicked again, faster this time. The diplomatic committee insisted. "They believe that having a human work with a Chitauri will promote understanding between our species." Ji-hoon nodded slowly. He had heard this before. Earth had only joined the galactic community 20 years ago. Many of the older species still saw humans as children, playing with technology they barely understood. The Chitauri, he had read, were among the oldest civilizations in known space. Their empire had existed for over 50,000 years. "I understand," he said, "but I'm here now. Maybe I can be useful." Nara's body language was hard to interpret, but the way her forward limbs shifted suggested annoyance. The Chitauri have been conducting advanced research for millennia. What could a human possibly contribute? The word stung, but Ji-hoon kept his expression neutral. He had learned early in his time on Helios Prime that getting angry only confirmed people's prejudices about humans being emotional and unstable. "Maybe a fresh perspective," he offered. "Different species think about problems differently. That's the whole point of this station, right?" Nara was silent for a long moment. Her mandibles clicked in a slow, rhythmic pattern. "Very well. Since you are here, you might as well make yourself useful. I'm attempting to integrate Chitauri neural interface technology with human computing systems. The translation layers keep failing." She gestured with one of her upper limbs toward a workstation where 2 very different pieces of technology sat connected by a tangle of cables. Ji-hoon approached and studied the setup. The Chitauri device was beautiful, all smooth curves and softly glowing crystals. The human computer next to it looked clunky and primitive by comparison. "What kind of errors are you getting?" he asked. "Data corruption. The Chitauri system processes information in quantum parallel streams. Your human computers use binary logic. They are fundamentally incompatible." Ji-hoon examined the connection points. He pulled up the error logs on his tablet and spent several minutes reading through the technical data. Nara watched him with her unreadable compound eyes. "Have you tried adding a buffer layer?" he asked finally. "Instead of trying to translate directly, what if we created an intermediate system that speaks both languages? That would introduce latency and reduce efficiency. But it would work, right? Sometimes slower and functional is better than fast and broken." Nara's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "That is not an illogical approach. The Chitauri prefer elegant solutions. Adding another layer seems crude." "Humans are good at crude," Ji-hoon said with a small smile. "We've built our whole civilization on workarounds and duct tape." For the first time, Nara's voice through the translator carried something other than cold professionalism. Was that curiosity? "Explain this duct tape." Over the next several hours, they worked together. Ji-hoon's approach was chaotic, compared to Nara's precise methodology. He tried things just to see what would happen, while she calculated every move 3 steps ahead. When he made mistakes, he laughed and tried something else. When her carefully planned solutions failed, she would freeze for several seconds before adjusting. But slowly, the system began to work. By the time the station's artificial day cycle ended, they had achieved a stable connection between the two technologies. Data flowed from one system to the other without corruption. It was not elegant or efficient by Chitauri standards, but it functioned. Remarkable, Nara said, studying their work. This should not have worked so quickly. Sometimes the messy solution is the right solution, Ji-hoon said. He was tired but satisfied. You know, where I'm from, there's a saying, if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. Nara's mandibles clicked rapidly. The translator provided no interpretation of the sound, but Ji-hoon thought it might be laughter. Or maybe confusion. It was impossible to tell. Your species is very strange, Nara said finally. The Chitauri value precision and predictability. Humans seem to embrace chaos. Maybe, Ji-hoon agreed, but chaos can be creative, and sometimes creativity solves problems that logic can't. Nara tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost human. Perhaps there is more to learn from your species than I initially believed. You may return tomorrow. We have more work to do. It was not exactly a warm invitation, but it was something. Ji-hoon nodded and gathered his things. As he left the lab, he glanced back. Nara had already returned to her work, her delicate hands adjusting the equipment with practiced precision. He did not know it yet, but this was the beginning of something that would change both of their lives. And perhaps in time it would change the galaxy itself. 3 weeks had passed since Ji-hoon started working with Nara. The lab had become familiar territory, and their daily routine had settled into something comfortable. Each morning, Ji-hoon would arrive with 2 containers of hot beverages. One was coffee for himself. The other was a mineral solution that Nara's species consumed for nutrients and stimulation. You do not need to bring this every day, Nara said when he set the container beside her workstation. But she always drank it. Their project had grown more ambitious. They were no longer just connecting Chitauri and human technology. Now they were trying to create something new. A hybrid system that combined the strengths of both approaches. Nara's people thought in terms of perfect mathematical harmony. Humans thought in terms of practical solutions and creative workarounds. Look at this, Ji-hoon said, pulling up a holographic display. I modified the processing algorithm. Instead of trying to make it perfect, I added some randomization. It's messier, but it adapts faster to unexpected inputs. Nara studied the code with her compound eyes. Her mandibles clicked, and that rhythm Ji-hoon had learned meant she was thinking deeply. This violates 3 fundamental principles of efficient programming. I know. It should not work. But does it? Nara ran a simulation. The hybrid system processed data with surprising speed, adapting to problems that would have crashed a purely logical system. Her mandibles clicked rapidly. It works, she admitted. Your approach makes no sense, yet it achieves results. How do humans live with such contradiction? Ji-hoon laughed. We're used to it. The universe doesn't always make sense. Sometimes you just have to accept that and move forward. The Chitauri believe that everything can be understood through sufficient analysis, Nara said. She paused, then added quietly, but perhaps we are wrong about some things. It was the first time she had admitted her people might not have all the answers. Ji-hoon recognized it for what it was, a moment of trust. He smiled but did not make a big deal of it. Instead, he changed the subject to their next experiment. As the weeks continued, Ji-hoon learned more about Nara and her species. The Chitauri were organized, disciplined, and brilliant. Their civilization had mastered quantum physics while humans were still learning to make fire. They had colonized 1,000 worlds and perfected genetic engineering. They were, by any measure, superior to humanity in almost every way, but they were also alone. Do you have family? Ji-hoon asked one day during a break. They were eating lunch, or rather he was eating while she processed her mineral solution. Family is not a concept the Chitauri employ, Nara replied. We are created in genetic facilities, raised in educational centers, and assigned to roles based on our aptitudes. The idea of emotional bonds based on shared genetics is inefficient. That sounds lonely. Loneliness is an emotional state. The Chitauri have evolved beyond such primitive feelings. Ji-hoon studied her carefully. You really believe that? Nara's mandibles stopped clicking. For a long moment, she did not move. It is what we are taught. What we have always been taught. But what do you feel? She trailed off. Her translator fell silent. I do not know how to answer that question. The conversation hung in the air between them. Ji-hoon wanted to push further, but he sensed that Nara needed time. He changed the subject back to their work, and she seemed relieved. But something had shifted. Over the following days, Nara began asking him questions. Not about technology or engineering, but about being human. What was it like to have parents? Why did humans form friendships? How could they function in a society where emotional attachments made people vulnerable? Ji-hoon answered honestly. He told her about his mother, who had encouraged his love of engineering. About his best friend from university, who had helped him through difficult times. About the messy, complicated, beautiful chaos of human relationships. It sounds exhausting, Nara said. It is, Ji-hoon agreed, but it's also what makes life worth living. Then came the day that changed everything. The station's alarms began blaring at midday. The calm voice of the automated system announced, "Warning. Reactor malfunction detected in Sector 9. All personnel evacuate immediately." Ji-hoon and Nara looked at each other. Sector 9 was 3 levels below them. If the reactor went critical, half the station could be destroyed. "We need to leave," Nara said, already moving toward the door. But Ji-hoon's tablet was showing the station's emergency systems. His engineering training kicked in as he read the data. Wait, the containment system is failing because the backup coolant lines are blocked. Someone needs to manually open the secondary valves. The emergency teams will handle it. They're 15 minutes away. The reactor will go critical in 8 minutes. Ji-hoon was already running toward the door. I can get there in 5. You will die. Nara's voice was sharp, almost panicked. The radiation suits in the emergency locker should hold long enough. He was in the corridor now, running. Behind him, he heard the clicking of Nara's limbs on the metal floor as she followed. This is irrational, she called after him. Probably, he shouted back. The emergency locker was right where the station maps said it would be. Ji-hoon pulled on a radiation suit, the heavy material making his movements clumsy. He could see Nara in the corridor watching him with those impossible compound eyes. Go to the evacuation zone, he told her. Keep yourself safe. She stopped, mandibles clicking in agitation. Why are you doing this? Because people will die if I don't. He sealed the suit's helmet. Including you, now go. The next 6 minutes were a blur. Ji-hoon ran through corridors filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. He found the reactor chamber where 3 other aliens were trapped by a collapsed bulkhead. The radiation meters on his suit were screaming warnings at him. With shaking hands, he accessed the manual override panel. The valves were stuck, frozen by the heat and pressure. He grabbed a maintenance tool and used it as a lever, putting all his strength into forcing the mechanisms to move. The first valve opened, then the second. Coolant began flooding into the reactor chamber. The temperature reading started to drop. The third valve would not budge. Ji-hoon's suit was failing. He could feel the heat even through the protective layers. His vision was getting blurry. But he kept pushing, kept pulling, kept fighting the stuck valve with everything he had. Finally, it gave way. The reactor stabilized. The alarms changed tone, indicating the crisis had passed. Ji-hoon collapsed against the wall, his body exhausted and his suit compromised. The 3 trapped aliens were staring at him with expressions he could not read. Emergency teams arrived moments later. They pulled him out of the reactor chamber and rushed him to medical. The doctors told him he was lucky. Another minute in that radiation and he would have suffered permanent damage. When he woke in the medical bay, Nara was there. She stood beside his bed, absolutely still. Her compound eyes reflected the soft lights of the medical equipment. You nearly died, she said, but I didn't. You risked your life for beings you did not know. For me, this behavior does not follow any logical pattern, Ji-hoon smiled weakly. Welcome to being human. We do stupid things for people we care about. Nara's mandibles clicked in that rapid pattern again. Care about? We have only worked together for 3 weeks. Sometimes that's enough. She was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice through the translator was different. Softer somehow. I do not understand you, Ji-hoon, but I am glad you survived. I would not want to continue this research alone. It was not a declaration of friendship, but from a Chitauri who claimed emotions did not exist, it was everything. The weeks after the reactor incident brought subtle changes to the lab. Nara worked with the same precision as always, but now she would pause sometimes to ask Jihyun questions that had nothing to do with their research. She wanted to know about Earth, about human music, about the concept of humor. Each question revealed a curiosity that should not have existed in someone who claimed emotions were primitive. Jihyun noticed other changes too. The bioluminescent patterns on Nara's carapace, which he had initially thought were fixed markings, would sometimes shift and glow softly when they talked. Her mandibles clicked in different rhythms depending on her mood. He was learning to read her, to understand the being behind the alien appearance. "Your species plays games for enjoyment?" Nara asked one afternoon. They were calibrating sensors, work that had become routine enough to allow conversation. "Sure. Games, sports, puzzles. Anything to challenge ourselves or have fun?" "Fun." She repeated the word as if tasting it. "The Chitauri have optimization exercises. We compete to solve problems faster and more efficiently, but we do not derive pleasure from it. It is simply what we do." "That sounds terrible," Jihyun said honestly. "It is all I have ever known." Nara paused in her work. "But lately I find myself wondering what I have been missing." Before Jihyun could respond, the lab door opened. Another Chitauri entered, larger than Nara, with darker coloration and more elaborate markings on his carapace. His presence filled the room with an aura of authority. "Dr. Nara," the newcomer said, his translator rendering his voice as deep and commanding. "I need to speak with you." Nara's body language changed instantly. Her limbs drew closer to her body, her posture becoming more rigid. "Elder Taiyang, I did not expect you." Clearly, Taiyang's compound eyes fixed on Jihyun. "You may leave, human. This is a private matter." Jihyun looked at Nara, who gave a small gesture that might have been a nod. He gathered his tablet and left, but not before catching the tension in the room. Whatever Taiyang wanted to discuss, it was not good news. He waited in the corridor outside. Through the door, he could hear the clicking of Chitauri communication, too fast and complex for the translators to handle. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. When the door finally opened, Taeyang emerged without acknowledging Jihyun's presence. The elder Chitauri walked away with measured, deliberate steps. Jihyun entered the lab to find Nara standing motionless at her workstation. Her bioluminescent patterns were dim, almost extinguished. "What happened?" he asked gently. "Elder Taiyang is concerned about my behavior." Her voice was flat, empty. "He says I am spending too much time with you, that I am exhibiting signs of emotional contamination." "Emotional contamination? You mean having feelings?" "The Chitauri eliminated emotional response from our species 10,000 years ago. It was a conscious choice, a step in our evolution. Emotions make beings irrational, unpredictable, weak." She turned to face him. "Taiyang says I am regressing, that my exposure to human influence is damaging my cognitive function." Jihyun felt anger rising in his chest. "That's ridiculous. You're one of the smartest beings I've ever met. Having emotions doesn't change that." "Does it not?" Nara's mandibles clicked in agitation. "I have been experiencing irregularities. When you risked your life in the reactor chamber, I felt something I could not classify. Fear, perhaps, or distress. And when you survived, there was relief. These sensations interfere with my ability to think clearly. Or maybe they give you new ways to think," Jihyun suggested. "Different doesn't mean worse." The Chitauri would disagree. She moved to her workstation, pulling up biological data. "I have been monitoring my own physiology. My neural patterns are changing. Chemical balances in my system are shifting. By Chitauri standards, I am becoming defective." Jihyun stepped closer. "You're not defective. You're changing. Maybe you're becoming more than what you were. Or less." Her voice was barely a whisper through the translator. "Taeyang wants me to return to the Chitauri homeworld for evaluation. He believes early intervention can reverse the damage. Will you go?" Nara was silent for a long moment. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered with colors Jihyun had never seen before. "I do not know. Part of me understands the logic. If I am becoming compromised, I should seek correction. But another part of me—" She trailed off. "What does that part say?" "It says I do not want to lose this. Whatever this is." She gestured between them. "Working with you has been—" "I do not have words for it. The Chitauri language does not contain the vocabulary I need." Jihyun's heart was pounding. He knew what he was feeling, even if Nara did not have the words for it yet. But pushing too hard might drive her away. "You don't have to decide right now. Take your time. Over the following days, their work continued, but the shadow of Taeyang's visit hung over them. Ji-hoon noticed other Chitauri on the station watching them, their compound eyes tracking Nara's movements with what seemed like disapproval. The diplomatic quarter, once neutral ground, now felt hostile. One evening, as the station's artificial day was ending, Nara asked Ji-hoon to stay late. They were alone in the lab, surrounded by their hybrid technology. The soft glow of the equipment cast strange shadows on the walls. "I need to tell you something," Nara said. Her voice through the translator was unsteady. "Something I should not feel but cannot deny." Ji-hoon waited, barely breathing. "When I am with you, my thoughts are clearer, not more confused. The world seems more vibrant. Food tastes more intense. The station's lights are more beautiful." Her mandibles clicked rapidly. These are all signs of emotional contamination, according to Chitauri medical science. But if this is contamination, why does it feel like waking up from a long sleep? "Because maybe it's not contamination," Ji-hoon said softly. "Maybe it's just living. I have existed for 37 cycles, but I think I've only been alive for these past few months." Nara's bioluminescent patterns glowed brighter. "Is this what humans call friendship?" Ji-hoon's throat felt tight. "It's at least that, at least." Nara tilted her head. "There is more?" "There could be, if you wanted there to be." The silence stretched between them. Then Nara reached out with one of her delicate hands. Ji-hoon extended his own and their fingers touched. Her carapace was warm and smooth against his skin. They stayed like that, connected by the simplest of gestures as the galaxy spun around them. "I am afraid," Nara admitted. "The Chitauri do not feel fear, yet I am afraid. Of losing this. Of what I am becoming. Of what it means." "Being afraid just means you have something worth protecting," Ji-hoon said. "Then I am very afraid indeed." But their moment of peace did not last. 2 days later, an official summons arrived. The Chitauri High Council requested Nara's immediate return to the homeworld. It was not a request she could refuse. Elder Taeyang himself would escort her, to ensure she arrived safely for her psychological evaluation and recalibration. The procedure had a clinical name, but everyone knew what it really was. They would suppress the parts of Nara's brain that had begun experiencing emotions. They would erase everything that made her different, everything that made her special. They would turn her back into what the Chitauri thought she should be. Ji-hoon found her packing her research materials in the lab. Her movements were mechanical, automatic. "You're really going," he said. "I must. To refuse would bring shame to my research division and to the Chitauri diplomatic mission here." "What about what you want?" Nara's hand stilled. "What I want does not matter. The needs of my species outweigh individual preference. This is what the Chitauri have always believed. But you're not just any Chitauri anymore." Ji-hoon moved to stand in front of her. "You're Nara. You're unique. You're someone who learned to feel and think in new ways. They want to take that away from you. Perhaps they should." Her voice was small. "Perhaps I am broken and this is the repair I need." "You're not broken. You're evolving. Evolution without purpose is mutation. Mutation is error." She turned away from him. "I leave tomorrow morning. Elder Taeyang will accompany me. The procedure will take 3 days. When I return, I will be corrected. When you return, you won't be you anymore." Nara's bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark. "No, I suppose I will not." That night, Ji-hoon could not sleep. He lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about Nara facing a procedure that would destroy everything that made her special. The unfairness of it burned in his chest. The Chitauri called it correction, but it was really murder. They were killing the person Nara was becoming because she did not fit their perfect, emotionless ideal. By morning, Ji-hoon had made his decision. It was reckless and probably impossible, but he had to try. Because if there was one thing humans understood better than any species in the galaxy, it was this. Sometimes the only logical choice was to do something completely crazy for someone you loved. The transport carrying Nara and Elder Taeyang had left Helios Prime 6 hours ago. Ji-hoon sat in a dingy bar in the station's lower levels, across from a woman who looked like she had seen every corner of the galaxy and survived them all through sheer stubbornness. "You want me to do what?" Hyejin asked, nursing a drink that glowed faintly blue. She was human, maybe 10 years older than Ji-hoon, with scars on her hands and a cynical smile that suggested she had heard every stupid idea in the universe. "Get me to the Chitauri homeworld. fast, before they perform the procedure on her. The Chitauri homeworld is 3 days away by standard transport. It's in restricted space, and even if we could get there, their security is tighter than a vacuum seal. Hyejin studied him with sharp eyes. This is about a girl, isn't it? She's not a girl, she's Chitauri. That doesn't answer my question. Hyejin leaned back. Let me guess. You fell for someone who's not human, and now you want to pull off a rescue mission in one of the most heavily guarded systems in the galaxy. Do you have any idea how many laws you'd be breaking? 17 by my count, Ji-hoon admitted. But she's going to have her emotions surgically removed. They're going to destroy who she is because their society can't handle the idea that feelings might not be weakness. Hyejin was quiet for a moment, swirling her drink. I had a Chitauri crewmate once, good pilot, smart. Then one day she started laughing at a joke I made. Next thing I knew, she was recalled to the homeworld. Never saw her again. She looked up at Ji-hoon. Your friend, she means something to you? Everything. Figures. Hyejin downed the rest of her drink. My ship can make it in 2 days if I push the engines hard. But I want 10,000 credits, and you're doing all the crazy parts yourself. I'll get you there, but I'm not storming any medical facilities. Deal. They shook hands. Ji-hoon did not have 10,000 credits, but he would worry about that later. Right now, getting to Nara was all that mattered. Hyejin's ship was small, fast, and held together with what looked like optimism and spare parts. The engines roared to life, and within an hour they had left Helios Prime behind. Ji-hoon spent the journey trying to plan what he would do when they arrived. He had no weapons, no authority, and no real plan beyond find Nara and get her out. You know this is insane, right? Hyejin called from the pilot's seat. I've been told that a few times. Good. Just wanted to make sure you knew. She adjusted their course, pushing the ship even faster. There's someone we need to pick up along the way. An old contact who might be able to help. 6 hours later, they docked at a small way station orbiting a dead planet. Waiting for them was another Chitauri, smaller than Nara with lighter coloring. Her bioluminescent patterns glowed in complex patterns that seemed almost like writing. This is Soman, Hyejin said. She's an exile, left the Chitauri homeworld 20 years ago. Soman's compound eyes studied Ji-hoon. When she spoke, her translator gave her a voice like wind chimes. Hyejin tells me you wish to prevent a recalibration procedure. This is a foolish quest. Probably, Ji-hoon agreed. Will you help me anyway? I fled my homeworld because I refused the procedure myself, Soman said. The Chitauri High Council declared me defective and erased my existence from all records. I have nothing to lose and much sympathy for your cause. Yes, I will help. With Soman's knowledge of Chitauri security and Hyejin's piloting skills, they made it into Chitauri space without being detected. The homeworld appeared before them, a beautiful blue-green sphere covered in geometrically perfect cities. Everything about it spoke of order, control, and ancient power. The medical facility where they perform recalibrations is in the capital city, Soman explained. She pulled up a holographic map. It is underground, protected by multiple security layers. But there is a maintenance entrance here used by automated systems. If we can override the locks, we might slip inside. Might? Ji-hoon asked. I left 20 years ago. Security has likely improved since then. Soman's mandibles clicked. But the Chitauri trust their systems to be perfect. They do not expect infiltration because no one has ever been foolish enough to try. Until now, Hyejin muttered. They landed on the outskirts of the city, using forged clearance codes that Soman had somehow acquired. The city itself was breathtaking and disturbing in equal measure. Every building was placed with mathematical precision. Every street formed perfect geometric patterns. Not a single piece of litter or disorder could be seen anywhere. It was beautiful the way a surgical instrument was beautiful, cold, precise, and designed for a single purpose. Ji-hoon felt out of place in his worn engineering clothes and messy human appearance. Soman had provided him with a maintenance worker's uniform, but he still drew stares from the Chitauri citizens they passed. Humans were rare here, and clearly not welcome. The maintenance entrance was exactly where Soman remembered it. She connected a small device to the lock, and after several tense minutes, the door clicked open. Security is focused outward, Soman whispered. They believe no one inside their society would ever break their laws. Use this advantage. They moved through tunnels lined with pipes and cables. Everything was clean and organized, labeled in Chitauri script that Ji-hoon could not read. Soman led them deeper, navigating from memory and intuition. The procedure rooms are on level 17, she said. If your friend arrived yesterday, she will be in preparation. They perform psychological conditioning first, then the neural modification. We may already be too late. We're not too late, Ji-hoon said firmly. We can't be. They emerged into a wider corridor with doors along both sides. Through windows in the doors, Ji-hoon could see Chitauri lying on medical tables, connected to machines with wires and tubes. Their bioluminescent patterns were dim or absent entirely. Some had their eyes open, staring at nothing. These are patients who have completed the procedure, Soman explained quietly. In a few days they will be released, corrected, and returned to proper society. Ji-hoon's stomach turned. This was what they wanted to do to Nara. Turn her into an empty shell, beautiful and perfect and utterly dead inside. Room 17-9, Soman said, pointing. That is where pre-procedure patients wait. They approached carefully. Through the window, Ji-hoon saw her. Nara sat on a medical platform, alone in the sterile white room. Her carapace seemed duller than he remembered. Her bioluminescent patterns barely glowed. She looked small and frightened, even though Chitauri were not supposed to feel fear. How do we get her out? Ji-hoon asked. The rooms are locked from the outside. Only medical personnel can open them. Soman checked her device. But I can create a system malfunction. It will open all the doors on this level simultaneously. However, it will also trigger alarms. We will have perhaps 5 minutes before security arrives. Then let's make those 5 minutes count. Soman activated her device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every door on the level slid open at once. Alarms began blaring. Chitauri patients stumbled into the corridor, confused and disoriented. Ji-hoon ran to room 17-9. Nara looked up as he entered, her compound eyes widening in what could only be shock. Ji-hoon? How? Why are you here? To get you out. He took her hand. Come on, we don't have much time. You should not have come. This is forbidden. They will arrest you. They will... I don't care. He looked into her alien eyes and saw the person he had fallen for, still there, still fighting. I'm not letting them take you away from me, not without a fight. For a moment, Nara did not move. Then her mandibles clicked in rapid succession, and she stood. You are the most irrational being I have ever encountered. I'll take that as a compliment. Now let's go. But as they reached the corridor, security forces were already arriving. Chitauri guards in dark armor blocked their path, weapons raised. Behind them, Elder Taeyang emerged, his compound eyes fixed on Nara with something that looked like disappointment. Dr. Nara, he said calmly, step away from the human. This criminal behavior is proof that the contamination is more severe than we thought. She's not contaminated, Ji-hoon shouted. She's free, and you're terrified of what that means. Taeyang's mandibles clicked in a pattern that suggested cold anger. Take them both. The human will face charges for infiltration and attempted kidnapping. As for Nara, she will undergo immediate recalibration. Clearly, the damage is too severe for standard procedures. The guards moved forward. Ji-hoon looked at Nara, at Somin, at the corridor full of confused patients and advancing security. They were trapped, outnumbered, and out of time. This was not how this was supposed to end. The guards were 3 steps away when Somin moved. She was smaller than the security forces, but faster. Her hands flew across a panel on the wall, and suddenly the lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red light. The guards hesitated for just a second. Run, Somin shouted. They ran. Ji-hoon kept hold of Nara's hand as they sprinted down the corridor. Behind them, he could hear Taeyang shouting orders and the clicking of many Chitauri limbs on the floor. Alarms were screaming. The entire facility knew something was wrong. This way, Somin called. She led them through a service door and down a narrow stairwell. I know these facilities. All of them have the same design. There is an emergency exit on the lowest level. How far? Ji-hoon gasped. 8 levels. They ran down the stairs, their footsteps echoing. Nara's breathing was labored. She was not built for this kind of physical stress. Neither was Ji-hoon, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew closer. They burst through a door on the lowest level. The hallway ahead was empty, stretching toward what looked like an exit. Freedom was right there, so close. Then Nara stumbled. Her legs gave out and she collapsed to the floor. Ji-hoon caught her before she hit the ground completely. I cannot, she gasped. My body is not designed for this exertion. Leave me. Save yourselves? Absolutely not. Ji-hoon tried to help her up, but she was too heavy. Her Chitauri body, with its dense carapace and 6 limbs, weighed more than he could easily lift. Somin looked back down the corridor they had come from. They will be here in seconds. We must go now. Then go, Ji-hoon said. I'm not leaving her. You fool of a human. I'm a human. We're all fools. It's our best quality. He looked down at Nara. Can you stand it all? I will try. Together they got Nara to her feet. She leaned heavily on Ji-hoon, and they began moving toward the exit. But they were too slow. The security forces poured into the corridor behind them, weapons raised. Stop. Taeyang's voice echoed. There is nowhere to run. Ji-hoon's mind raced. He looked at the walls, the ceiling, the floor. His engineering training cataloged everything he saw. Power conduits, ventilation systems, structural supports. The building was old, designed thousands of years ago. Efficient and perfect, but also rigid, inflexible. Somin, he said quickly, those power conduits. If they overloaded, what would happen? The emergency systems would activate. Containment barriers would seal to protect the rest of the facility. Sealing us in with the guards? No, sealing the guards out. We are closer to the exit. The barriers would fall between us and them. Ji-hoon pulled out his tablet. It was against every safety regulation to overload a power system. But since when had humans followed rules when there was a better way? His fingers flew across the screen, accessing the facility's network through a maintenance port he had spotted. What are you doing? Nara asked weakly. Something stupid. Hold on. He found the power management system. It was well protected, but whoever designed it had not anticipated someone trying to break in. The Chitauri believed their systems were perfect, which meant they had not planned for imperfection. Ji-hoon sent a cascade of override commands. Power surged through the conduits far more than they were designed to handle. Lights flickered. The emergency systems detected the malfunction and responded exactly as Somin had predicted. Heavy barriers slammed down from the ceiling, cutting the corridor in half. The security forces were on one side. Ji-hoon, Nara, and Somin were on the other with the exit just ahead. Go, Somin urged. They reached the exit and emerged into the Chitauri night. The city around them was still geometrically perfect, still coldly beautiful, but behind them, the medical facility was in chaos. More alarms were blaring. Security forces would be surrounding the building any moment. Hyejin, Ji-hoon gasped into his communicator. We need pickup now. On my way. But the whole city knows you're here. Every guard and drone will be hunting you. They ran through empty streets. The Chitauri who saw them stopped and stared, their compound eyes reflecting confusion. This was not supposed to happen. Crime did not exist in Chitauri society. Chaos was not permitted. Ji-hoon's lungs burned. Nara was getting heavier with each step, her body shutting down from exhaustion and stress. They turned a corner and found themselves in a small plaza. 3 security drones hovered into view, scanning them with sensor beams. Stop where you are, the drones announced in perfect, emotionless voices. You are under arrest for... A blast of energy from above destroyed all 3 drones. Hyejin's ship descended, its cargo door already open. Get in. They scrambled aboard. Hyejin did not wait for them to be seated before launching the ship into the sky. The sudden acceleration pressed them to the floor. Through the windows, Ji-hoon could see more drones rising to pursue them. Hold on to something, Hyejin shouted. This is going to be rough. The ship twisted through the air, dodging energy blasts from the pursuing drones. Hyejin's piloting was insane, threading through spaces that seemed too narrow, pulling maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. But somehow she made it work. They broke atmosphere and accelerated into space. The drones fell back, unable to match their speed. but larger ships were launching from orbital defense platforms. The Chitauri were not going to let them escape easily. "Jump drive is charging," Hyejin announced. 30 seconds. Try not to die before then. Energy blasts rocked the ship. Hyejin spun them through a corkscrew pattern that made Ji-hoon's stomach revolt. Warning lights flashed across every surface. Something was on fire in the engine room. 10 seconds. A Chitauri warship appeared directly in their path. Its weapons were charging, enough firepower to vaporize Hyejin's small ship instantly. 5 seconds. The warship fired. Time seemed to slow. Ji-hoon looked at Nara, collapsed on the floor beside him, her bioluminescent patterns flickering weakly. If these were his last moments, at least he had tried. At least he had given her a chance. The jump drive activated. Space twisted around them. The warship's blast passed through empty space where they had been a microsecond before. They tumbled into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Chitauri homeworld far behind. In the sudden silence after the chaos, Ji-hoon sat on the floor, breathing hard. Soman was checking her equipment, calm as if she fled planetary security forces every day. Hyejin was running diagnostics on her damaged ship, cursing in 3 languages, and Nara lay on the floor, barely moving. "Nara?" Ji-hoon crawled to her side. "Are you okay?" Her compound eyes opened slowly. Her mandibles clicked weakly. "I am alive, but I should not be. We should not have escaped. Everything I was taught says this was impossible." "Impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet." Ji-hoon took her hand. His own was shaking from adrenaline and fear and relief. "You're safe now." "Safe," she repeated the word. Then her body began shaking. Her bioluminescent patterns flashed rapidly in patterns Ji-hoon had never seen. Her mandibles clicked in a rhythm that sounded almost like sobbing. "I am not safe. I am ruined. I was supposed to be corrected, made whole again. Instead, I ran. I abandoned my duty, my species, everything I was meant to be." Her voice through the translator broke. "I am defective, broken, wrong. I'm not worthy of this. Not worthy of your help, your kindness, your—" "Stop," Ji-hoon said firmly. "You're not broken. You're not defective. I am. The Chitauri are meant to be perfect, logical, without these terrible feelings that tear at me from inside. But I am filled with fear and confusion and—" She trailed off, her whole body trembling. "And what?" "And something else. Something I do not have a name for. Something that makes me want to be near you. That makes me glad you risked everything to find me. That terrifies me because I cannot control it or understand it." Her bioluminescent patterns were pulsing now, almost like a heartbeat. "I am not worthy of your affection. I am contaminated and lesser and wrong. You should have let them fix me." Ji-hoon's heart broke at the pain in her voice. Here was someone discovering emotions for the first time, and the first thing her society had taught her was to be ashamed of them, to see them as disease rather than life. "Nara," he said softly. "Look at me." She turned her compound eyes toward him. Even alien as they were, he could see the fear and confusion in them. "You are not contaminated. You are not broken. You are becoming something beautiful." He reached out and gently touched her face, feeling the warm smoothness of her carapace. "Everything you're feeling? That's not wrong. That's what makes life worth living." "But I am afraid," she whispered. "Constantly afraid. Being afraid means you have something to lose. Something precious." He moved closer. "I'm afraid too. Afraid of losing you. Afraid I won't be able to protect you. Afraid that I'm not enough. You crossed the galaxy for me. You broke into an impenetrable facility. You escaped an entire planetary defense system." Her mandibles clicked softly. "How could you possibly not be enough?" "Because I'm just human. Just one person. And you're—" He struggled to find words. "You're everything." Nara was silent for a long moment. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to a warm, golden glow. "The Chitauri have no concept for what I want to say. Our language does not contain the words. But humans have a way of expressing this feeling. Do they not? We have lots of ways." "Which one do you mean?" "You said humans express deep affection through physical contact. A gesture of connection." Her mandibles clicked nervously. "What did you call it?" "A kiss?" "Yes, that." She looked down, almost shy. The colony world Soman had spoken of was called Haven. The name was optimistic, perhaps too optimistic, but it proved accurate. The planet sat at the edge of explored space, far from the major powers and their endless regulations. Here, beings from 100 different species lived together, asking no questions about where anyone came from or what they were running from. The agent's ship limped into Haven's orbit 3 days after their escape from the Chitauri homeworld. The damage from their chase was severe. Half the systems were offline, and the hull had been breached in 2 places. It was a miracle they had made it this far. "She's done," Hyejin said sadly, patting the ship's console like saying goodbye to an old friend. "Going to cost more to fix her than she's worth. Guess I'm grounded for a while." "I am sorry," Nara said. She had spent most of the journey recovering, her body slowly adapting to the stress of their escape. "Your ship was destroyed because of me." "Because of us," Ji-hoon corrected, "and we'll figure something out. We always do." They landed at Haven's main spaceport, a chaotic mess of different architectural styles and technologies. Nothing matched. Nothing was organized. It was the exact opposite of the Chitauri homeworld's geometric perfection. Somehow, that made it beautiful. As they walked through the crowded streets, Ji-hoon noticed something remarkable. No one stared at them. A human and a Chitauri walking hand in hand drew no attention at all. Here they were just another couple among thousands, and the freedom of that anonymity was intoxicating. They rented a small apartment on the edge of the city. It was not much, just 2 rooms and basic amenities, but it was theirs. For the first time since they had met, they had a space that belonged to them, where no one would judge or interfere. "It is small," Nara observed. "Examining their new home. We'll make it work." Ji-hoon was already thinking about how to set up a workshop. They both needed work, and their skills in hybrid technology were unique. But their peace did not last long. 3 days after arriving on Haven, Soman came to their apartment with news and a warning. "The Chitauri have not given up searching for you," she said, settling onto a cushion designed for her species' body. "They have classified Nara as a dangerous deviant. There is a reward for her capture." Nara's bioluminescent patterns dimmed. "I have brought danger to all of you. You've done nothing wrong," Ji-hoon said firmly. "They're the ones who—" "There is more," Soman interrupted. "The data we stole during our escape. I have been analyzing it. The recalibration procedure, the emotional suppression, all of it. This is information the Chitauri High Council has kept hidden for thousands of years." She activated a holographic display. Images and data filled the air between them. Medical records, historical documents, and genetic analysis scrolled past. "The Chitauri were not always emotionless," Soman explained. 10,000 years ago, we felt as strongly as humans do, but the ruling council of that era decided emotions made society unstable. They wanted perfect control, perfect order, so they engineered the change slowly over generations. Ji-hoon studied the data. They bred emotions out of their entire species? Not quite. They suppressed the neural pathways, but the capacity remained. That is why beings like Nara can redevelop emotional responses when exposed to the right stimuli. Soman's mandibles clicked in anger. The High Council has known this truth all along. They maintain the suppression because it serves their power. Nara's voice shook. "This means my people are prisoners. We could all feel, all live fully, but we are kept in chains we cannot even see." "Yes." Soman turned to face them both. "And now you must decide what to do with this information. If it becomes public, it could change Chitauri society forever, or it could be suppressed and nothing will change." Ji-hoon looked at Nara. Her compound eyes met his. He could see the conflict in her body language, the way her limbs tensed and relaxed rhythmically. This was not just data. This was the truth about her entire species, and what they did with it would have consequences they could not predict. "We should release it," Nara said finally. "My people deserve to know the truth. They deserve the choice." "The Chitauri High Council will not allow this information to spread," Soman warned. "They will hunt you more fiercely than ever. You will never be safe." "I am already not safe," Nara replied, "but perhaps my discomfort can purchase freedom for others." Over the next week, they worked to prepare the data for release. Soman had contacts in underground information networks, beings who specialized in spreading truths that governments wanted hidden. They would ensure the information reached every corner of Chitauri space and beyond. But the High Council was already moving. 5 days before they planned to release the data, Chitauri agents arrived on Haven. They came quietly, pretending to be traders and tourists. But Somin recognized them for what they were. "They are hunting," she said urgently, scanning for Chitauri biosignatures. "They will find us soon. Then we release the data now." Ji-hoon said. We can't wait any longer. They sent the information to Soman's contacts. Within hours, it began spreading across the galactic networks. News organizations picked it up. Scientists analyzed it. Most importantly, Chitauri citizens began reading it, learning the truth about their own history. The response was immediate and explosive. On the Chitauri homeworld, protests erupted. Thousands of Chitauri demanded the right to choose for themselves whether to keep their emotional suppression. The High Council tried to shut down the information flow, but it was too late. Once released, truth was impossible to contain. But the Council's agents on Haven were closing in. They tracked the data released to the colony world and began searching systematically. Soman received word that they were checking every Chitauri on the planet. We need to leave, Hyejin said. She had been working non-stop to repair her ship, but it was not ready. Another 2 days and we could fly. But we don't have 2 days. Then we make a stand, Ji-hoon said. We've come this far. I'm not going to let them take Nara now. You are one human, Soman pointed out. They will send a full security team. Trained warriors with advanced weapons. This is not a problem you can solve with engineering tricks. But Ji-hoon was already thinking. The Chitauri had advantages. Organization, training, superior technology. But humans had something else. Humans had the ability to improvise, to turn any environment into a weapon, to do the unexpected thing at the unexpected moment. Tell me about their tactics, he said to Soman. How do Chitauri security forces operate? They follow perfect protocols. Every situation has a prescribed response. They do not deviate. So they're predictable. I would say reliable. Reliable means predictable. Ji-hoon was already planning. Hyejin, what weapons do we have? What weapons? This is a cargo ship, not a warship. I've got a plasma cutter for salvage work and maybe some flash grenades for pirates. That's it. That's enough. Soman, you know the Chitauri. What scares them? Chitauri do not feel fear. Then what makes them hesitate? What breaks their perfect protocols? Soman's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Chaos. Situations they have not trained for. The Chitauri need order. When faced with disorder, they pause to calculate the proper response. Then we give them chaos. Over the next day, Ji-hoon turned their apartment building into a trap. He used his engineering knowledge and whatever materials he could scavenge. He rigged the lighting to create strobing effects that would confuse Chitauri compound eyes. He created noisemakers tuned to frequencies that would disorient their audio sensors. He even managed to build a smoke system that would fill the corridors with harmless but vision-blocking mist. It was crude and improvised, everything held together with wire and hope. The Chitauri would laugh at its lack of elegance, but Ji-hoon was not trying to be elegant. He was trying to survive. The Chitauri agents arrived at sunset, 6 of them, moving with precise coordination. They entered the building through multiple entrances simultaneously, cutting off escape routes with practiced efficiency. Ji-hoon activated his systems. The lights began strobing in random patterns. The noisemakers emitted their disorienting frequencies. Smoke filled the corridors. And in the confusion, Ji-hoon, Nara, Hyejin, and Soman moved. They did not try to fight. Fighting 6 trained Chitauri agents would be suicide. Instead, they ran, using the chaos to slip past the confused security forces. The agents kept trying to regroup, to form their perfect response formations, but the environment kept changing. Every time they adapted to one problem, Ji-hoon triggered something new. They reached the roof where Hyejin had moved her partially repaired ship. The engines were online, barely, and the hull was patched with whatever materials she had found. It would not last long, but it might last long enough. The Chitauri agents burst onto the roof just as they were boarding. The leader raised his weapon, but before he could fire, something unexpected happened. Another Chitauri stepped between them and the ship. It was Taeyang. The elder had followed them across the galaxy, driven by duty and perhaps something else. But instead of helping the security forces, he stood in their way. Lower your weapons, Taeyang said. Elder, these criminals are exposing truth that our council has hidden for millennia. Taeyang's mandibles clicked in a patter 6. Months had passed since their escape from Haven. The independent station Hyejin had spoken of turned out to be real. A massive structure called Crossroads that floated in neutral space between 3 different stellar empires. Here, laws were whatever the station council decided, and the council believed in one simple principle: leave each other alone. Ji-hoon and Nara had made a life there. It was not the life either of them had planned. Jihoon had expected to spend his career fixing air recyclers on stations like Helios Prime. Nara had expected to conduct research in sterile Chitauri laboratories. Neither had imagined they would become symbols of a revolution they had not meant to start. But that was exactly what had happened. The data they released had spread like fire across the galaxy. Chitauri society, so perfect and controlled for 10,000 years, had begun to fracture. Some Chitauri demanded the right to restore their emotional capacity. Others insisted the old ways were best. The High Council was losing its grip on power, and no one knew what would replace it. And at the center of it all was Nara, the Chitauri scientist who had learned to feel and survived. Her story had been told and retold across 1,000 worlds. She had become a hero to some and a cautionary tale to others. Another message from the reformist movement, Nara said, reading from her datapad. They were in the small office they had set up, doing consulting work on hybrid technology systems. Their expertise was unique, and they had more clients than they could handle. They want me to speak at a gathering on the colony world of New Dawn. Do you want to go? Jihoon asked. He was working on a circuit board, his hands moving with practiced ease. I do not know. Nara's bioluminescent patterns flickered with uncertainty. Part of me wants to help. These Chitauri are trying to reclaim what was taken from them. But another part of me just wants to live quietly with you and not be a symbol for anyone. Jihoon set down his tools and turned to face her. Over the past months, he had learned to read her body language better than any human could read another human. The tilt of her head, the rhythm of her mandible clicks, the glow of her patterns, all of it spoke volumes. You don't have to be anyone's hero, he said gently. You're allowed to just be Nara. But what if I am the only one who can help them? What if my refusal to act leaves others trapped in the prison I escaped? It was a question she had been asking herself for months. Jihoon understood the weight of it. She felt responsible for every Chitauri still living under emotional suppression, even though the system had existed for 10,000 years before she was created. Let me ask you something, Jihoon said. If you go speak at this gathering, will it make you happy? Happiness is still a new concept for me. I am not certain I understand it yet. Then let me rephrase. When you imagine standing in front of a crowd, telling your story, helping others understand what happened to you, does that feel right? Nara was quiet for a long moment. Her compound eyes reflected the soft lights of their office. Yes, she finally said. It feels right. Terrifying, but right. Then we'll go, together. You would come with me. Always. Jihoon smiled. I'm your emotional support human. It's in my job description. Nara's mandibles clicked in the pattern he had learned was laughter. Even after 6 months, the sound still filled him with joy. Every laugh, every smile, every new emotion she discovered was a victory against the system that had tried to suppress her. The gathering on New Dawn was larger than either of them expected. Thousands of Chitauri had traveled from across the galaxy to attend. They came in groups and alone, young and old, all of them seeking the same thing, understanding. How did one become emotional after a lifetime of suppression? How did one learn to feel? Nara stood on a stage before the crowd. Jihoon watched from the side, close enough to provide support if she needed it, but far enough to let her have this moment. She had been nervous before going on, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with anxiety, but now facing her people she seemed to find a calm center. I do not have all the answers, she began. Her voice was amplified across the gathering. 6 months ago I could barely name what I was feeling. Fear, joy, confusion, love. All of it was new and overwhelming. Some days it still is. The crowd was silent, thousands of compound eyes fixed on her. The Chitauri High Council told us that emotions were primitive, that they made beings weak and irrational, that we had evolved beyond such things. Nara's mandibles clicked softly, but they lied. We did not evolve past emotions. We were robbed of them, and in losing our ability to feel, we lost something essential. She paused, and Jihoon could see her gathering courage for what came next. I am not a particularly brave Chitauri. I am not special or exceptional. I was a scientist doing research on a station, nothing more. But I met someone who showed me a different way of being. She looked toward Jihoon. A human who was willing to risk everything just to give me the choice to feel, and that choice changed my life. Nara went on to describe her journey, the confusion of first feelings, the fear of being different, the joy of connection. She spoke about the recalibration facility and the escape, about learning that the capacity for emotion had always been inside her, just waiting to be awakened. "You came here seeking guidance," she said toward the end, "but I cannot tell you how to feel." Emotions are not a formula or a protocol. They are messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but they are also beautiful. They are what make life more than just existence. When she finished, the crowd erupted, not in the organized, measured response typical of Chitauri gatherings. This was chaotic, emotional, alive. Some Chitauri were clicking their mandibles in patterns of joy. Others had their bioluminescent patterns glowing in colors Jihoon had never seen. A few were even crying, tears running down their smooth carapaces as they experienced emotions for perhaps the first time. After the gathering, Chitauri approached Nara one by one. They thanked her. They told their own stories. They asked questions she tried her best to answer. Jihoon watched it all, proud beyond words. An older Chitauri with elaborate markings approached them. Her bioluminescent patterns were bright and complex, pulsing with what seemed like excitement. "Dr. Nara," she said, "my name is Minji. I am a geneticist. I have been studying the data you released, and I believe I have found a way to safely restore emotional capacity to Chitauri without requiring exposure to other species." "That is remarkable," Nara said. "But why tell me?" "Because we need help. The reformist movement has resources, but we lack direction. We need someone who understands both the science and the experience, someone who can guide others through this transformation." Minji's mandibles clicked hopefully. "We need you." Nara looked at Jihoon. He gave her a small nod, leaving the choice to her. "I am not a leader," Nara said slowly. "I am just one being trying to understand herself." "That is exactly what we need," Minji replied. "Not a perfect leader, but a real one. Someone who struggles and learns alongside us." It took 3 days of discussion, but eventually Nara agreed. Not to be a leader, but to be a teacher, to help establish centers where Chitauri could safely explore emotional restoration, to train others in understanding the science behind what had been done to their species and how it could be undone. They returned to Crossroads to gather their things. The small office that had been their home and workplace was filled with memories now. This was where Nara had learned to laugh, where she had first said she loved him, where they had built something new from the ruins of their old lives. "Are you certain about this?" Jihoon asked as they packed. "We'll be traveling constantly, never staying in one place for long. It will be dangerous. The High Council still wants you captured." "I am certain of nothing," Nara admitted, "but I am certain I must try. For all the Chitauri who are still trapped, for all the beings across the galaxy living in systems that deny their nature, someone must show them another way is possible. Then I'm with you, wherever this goes." Nara's bioluminescent patterns glowed warmly. She reached out and took his hand, a gesture that had become natural over the months. "You have already given me so much. Your courage inspired mine. Your love taught me what love was. But I cannot ask you to give up your entire life for my cause. You're not asking. I'm choosing." Jihoon squeezed her hand gently. "Besides, someone needs to be the human perspective on your teaching team. And someone needs to make sure you remember to eat and sleep when you get too focused on work." "These are both true," Nara admitted. Her mandibles clicked in amusement. "You know me well. I should. I love you. And I love you." She said it easily now, without the confusion and fear that had colored the phrase 6 months ago. Strange that 4 simple sounds can contain so much meaning. They spent their last night on Crossroads watching ships come and go through the observation deck. The station was always busy, always alive with beings from 100 different worlds. Each one had their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams. "Do you ever regret it?" Jihoon asked as they watched a massive cargo hauler dock at one of the outer berths. "Leaving your old life behind? Becoming what you are now?" Nara considered the question carefully as she considered all questions. "Regret is a complex emotion. I mourn for the simplicity I once had,